on this computer. Okay, we got set. Sorry.
I always said if we, because essentially when we started this, if we had a week that nobody showed up, I would quit. I would do it. We have 3 here today. It's good to see all of you online. I can't, after the week I've had, I was going to tell you how good it was to see you. I was looking forward to seeing all of you anyway, but yeah, especially now. So it's Mary's birthday by now. You all know that. I haven't been listening, but I'm sure you told everybody.
I told everybody it was my birthday.
And you heard about the ER visit. So yeah, keep Mary on your prayers. Yesterday, her symptoms came back. Her tongue, she doesn't feel like she's swallowing as easily, but it responded to antihistamine. So just remember her. Phil, I haven't gotten, did you get word back?
I did not. He ended up going to the emergency hospital yesterday again. So this is Cherie and Phil, our previous next door neighbors. And so his blood pressure goes sky high and then really low. So it's probably a blood pressure issue.
Kathy isn't with us this time. It's always a concern, but remember Alton and remember Kathy. Jim Allen, we got word back that
Robin's on.
Is she?
Yeah, someplace I saw her. Yeah, right there.
So you want to tell about
Yeah, Jim Allen, he's on his break, but he had his tests come back and his tumor markers were down, and he got to play tennis this week, which is wonderful. And his scans are next week, so keep him in your prayers because obviously that's a very nervous time. And then Kelly.
We also saw a picture of Terry and Rob with Terry's brother, who we've kept in prayers that has had esophageal cancer. And he looked, what's that?
Pancreatic.
Oh, pancreatic.
Yeah.
I said, my dad had esophageal. I'm so sorry. But pancreatic, but he's really looking well for somebody that's been through pancreatic cancer, Terry. That was a nice picture, but remember that. And then Kelly is online, and I mention this each week, but do not forget Kelly. The pain, I can relate to the pain she's been in more than I would have been able to 6 months ago because of what I went through. So please keep Kelly in your prayers, and Kelly, it's good to see you today. God, we are thankful always. We have so many things. Even in the worst of times, there is evidence of your presence and your concern for us, and we're grateful. But these ones that we mention, that we continue to mention, we're going to ask again today. This is who you made us to be. Our concern for the ones that we talk about, and probably a lot of us, God, have others. Some people don't like to be called out, but and our concern, and our what we request, but we ask for, in all cases, your peace, your comfort, and the knowledge that you do care, that we're in your hands. This study reminds us that you call ordinary people just like us, and we're flawed, but you have a purpose for us. Help us to see that as we go through these. Help us to see ourselves in these words, these stories that you inspired and left behind. Amen.
Okay, we are doing the second week of Deborah, and we're looking at some women in the Old Testament, and we'll give you if we finish Deborah today, we will start Rahab, but if not, we're going to do Rahab next, and Rahab is in the book of Joshua, starting in chapter 2, just to give you an idea of where we're going. Where we left off, we're in Judges 4 and 5 with the story of Deborah. And remember, in Judges is the story of the Israelites are now in the promised land, and Moses has died, Joshua has died, and they go through a period of about 250 years of judges. And in the book of Judges, there's 12 judges mentioned, and 6 of them, they give us a story behind them. And one of those is Deborah. And Deborah is both a prophetess and a judge. And so we're reading her story. And where we left off was she had told Barak, is that right? Told to go out and fight Sisera, and Sisera is the commander on the other side. They had this battle, and everyone from Sisera's army has been killed, and Sisera ran in the other direction, so he escaped, and that's where we left off. We did have a side story last week when we were introduced in Judges 4:11 to Hepper, and he's a Kenite, and he was also a descendant of Moses's father-in-law. And it seemed like sort of an arbitrary introduction to this person, but something you have to remember: the Kenites, we found out in Judges 1, they had gone to live with the Israelites, and they had become part of the Israelites. They were Gentiles, but they had intermarried and became part of the Kenites, part of the Israelites. But this gentleman, Hepper, he left the Kenite group and he went out on his own. And that's what it said in Judges 4:11. So, and
seemingly random, but there was a reason why it's mentioned.
And so that's where we're gonna start off at Judges 4, verse 17. Meanwhile, Sisera had fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was peace between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite.
So, and I hope this doesn't come across again as boring. What we really want to do is to make this more fun, or at least open up some things. But the bottom line is, these people called Kenites were allies of the Israelites, and had been for a long time. And this one guy breaks off from everyone else and goes and pitches his tent, and he makes friends with the king who's been plaguing Israel for the last 20 years. He makes friends with the enemy. That's not a small distinction about who he is. They when it says there was peace between him and Jabin the king, that's supposed to tell you he's kind of
Become a traitor.
Playing both sides. Yeah, he's sort of a traitor.
And when you say pitch a tent, you don't mean a single tent. It's probably a compound.
He took his household, yeah.
So verse 18, Jael went out to greet Sisera and said to him, "Come in, my lord, come in with me. Do not be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. Sisera said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." So she opened a container of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him again. "Stand at the entrance to the tent," he said, "and if anyone comes and asks you, 'Is there a man here?' say no." But as he lay sleeping from exhaustion, Heber's wife, Jael, took a tent peg, grabbed a hammer, and went silently to Sisera. She drove the peg through his temple and into the ground, and he died.
Ooh.
Yeah, I heard at least one ooh about this. This is a little harsh, and we'll talk more about that. But what you keep in mind is this guy that we said left and moved out with his household, moved away from the Kenites. He's out of town. For all we know, he's over something to do with the battle going on. But his wife is there, and clearly his wife is still loyal to the Israelites. And so this guy took off. His army went one way, and he went the other, because he knows there's a place down here where they have an ally. And you can imagine running away for your life. And he couldn't stop, because he couldn't chance being run down by any of the Israelites. So by the time he gets to this tent, he's exhausted. You know, he really is. And he comes up, and Aber's wife greets him and says, "Oh yeah, you know, you're the friend of our king. Jay, come on in." And he tells her to lie for him. If anybody comes looking for me, you know, the old thing, if the phone rings and somebody says, "That's my old lady, I ain't here." That's what he did. He told her if anybody comes looking, because they're not gonna be inclined to enter the tent of this married woman. So if she says there's nobody here, they probably won't find out that he's there. So he says, "Lie for me." But he also asked for water, and she gave him milk. And the theory is, you know, a little warm milk puts you to sleep. He's already exhausted. And so he goes back in the tent and passes out. And as we read, she drives a tent peg through his head. These are different times. But then again, I read some of our headlines, and I'm not sure they're that different than what we have. It's just, you know, it's easy to look and say that's brutal. Well, it is, but it's kind of humanity. But if you remember, Deborah told Barak that he wouldn't get the glory for this winning this battle, that God would deliver the enemy into the hands of a woman. And the inclination was to think she means herself, but it wasn't herself.
It was Jael.
This guy, this you know, warlord. You think, how important could one guy be? But it's really important. You know, football coaches make a difference to the team, but a guy like this, that's the warlord. And remember, they had 900 iron chariots. You got to know how to use those. You have to know how to deploy them. You have to know, you know, how to maintain them. This guy is vitally important. So when he gets killed, their hope of coming back from this pretty much goes away. Yeah. That death comes to this mic. You don't have a mic. It's gonna be hard. I'm trying to go on. Okay, that death, what?
That was after the battle. There were no more chariots at that point.
True.
Running away. It's over.
True. But they can go regroup.
I'm sorry.
But these people, the Jabin, the king, that's not all of his army. He can regroup. He's been you know, harassing and hurting the Jews for 20 years. He's a big deal. I'm sorry, I mean,
My point was that we missed the clear statement from Deborah that God is going to deliver that army.
okay,
And I'm not sure that there is a physical explanation about milk versus water, exhaustion. All those are common traits, but we have no indication that it was a mortal physical thing as opposed to the prophecy from Deborah that that's what's going to happen, and it's happening now.
you know, as far as the exhaustion, I think I can say fairly certainly that he's running away. His army has lost. And I know the distance. I've looked at the maps, and I would bet he doesn't stop along the way because he thinks somebody's going to write him down. As for whether that's what the exhaustion was, or was it, you know, is God have a hand in this? Clearly, God has a hand in this. That's what the prophecy is about. I mean, this was ordained. There are people, just because we're gonna, you know, there are people who swear that the milk thing is just a metaphor, that she had sex with him. I don't see anything to indicate that. I try not to make those things up. But the man falls asleep, and she drives a tent peg through his head. That much we know. And we do know, though, that it is important. This guy, having a general who's really effective, has always been. I mean, look at Patton. Look at, you know, Rommel down at. I mean, it's always been that way. So if you read, we're going to read the next sentence, and it didn't instantly end Jabin's kingdom, but they're going to explain in the next sentences.
Verse 22. When Barak arrived in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went out to greet him and said to him, "Come, and I will show you the man you are seeking." So he went in with her, and there laid Sisera dead with a tent peg through his temple. On that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites grew stronger and stronger against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him.
So there you see, it's not like defeating this one guy instantly ended things, but it says that
It's the beginning of the end.
It's the beginning of the end. Yeah, I mean, he gets weaker and weaker, and the Israelites get stronger against him until they finally throw him down completely. And it says that, well, I don't think it says right there, it says another place, but Israel had peace for 40 years. And actually the word is undisturbed. So this, as Mary said, is the beginning of the end for this guy that has been oppressing them for such a long time.
So in chapter 5, at first we thought Barak and Deborah create a song, and we were trying to figure out, how does this really look? And to me, it sounds like it would be like at the end of a homecoming game, and everybody's going to sing the school anthem or whatever it is.
A lot of people think it's doesn't make sense that they would sing a song. Okay, kind of like West Side Story. There's been a fight, and now we're going to sing a song. But through history, people have always done this. That after a big battle, and kings at times paid people to make songs about them and the battle. They want to be remembered, but also the people want to remember a great victory. So turning it into a song is actually a really common thing to have happen. And we're not going to beat that to death, but don't think this is like some kind of a Broadway stage production. But the idea of memorializing a great battle in song is really common through history.
And we learned some additional things that we don't learn in the first part in chapter 4. So I'm on chapter 5. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. When the princes take the lead in Israel, when the people volunteer, bless the Lord. Listen, O kings, give ear, O princess. I will sing to the Lord. I will sing praise to the Lord, the God of Israel. O Lord, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens poured out rain, and the clouds poured down water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, the one of Sinai, before the Lord, the God of Israel.
We'll talk in a second.
Sure.
If you're reading along, you look at verse 2 of this, the first part of this song. When the princes take the lead in Israel, when the people volunteer, you notice she's not just talking about the great leaders. She's including all of the poor people who have to go fight the battle, the volunteers that show up on the battlefield. She's remembering them. This is how you know what this song is doing. It's sort of a chance for everybody to celebrate the great victory, but she makes all of them, she acknowledges all of them as having had a part. And then she continues to talk about Yahweh, about the Lord, and she mentions that the rain started, and that's going to be important in a few minutes.
In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were deserted, and the travelers took the byways. Life in the villages ceased. It ended in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. When they chose new gods, then war came to their gates. Not a shield or a spear was found among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with the Prince of Israel, with the volunteers among the people. Bless the Lord.
and here, we need to, this is gonna take, I'll lose some of this if we take too much longer. So again, I want to kind of make this come alive for you. I hope some of this will help, open it up. But she talks about the days of Shamgar. The highways were deserted. When there was a time where what we call England, Great Britain, was controlled by the Romans. Oh, there's somebody waiting to get in. It's immediate. It was controlled by the Romans, and the Romans get overstretched, and for a whole bunch of reasons, they have to retreat. They leave England, and they were a stabilizing influence, and all of a sudden they're gone, and these bandit, lords take over. There is no central government, but the people, remember the Romans build these great roads. They build them for commerce. But people are scared to travel after the Romans leave because they'll get waylaid on the road. And so they go through the forest. If they have to travel, they have to sneak around. It was a terrible time in England. And what she's saying is that this had been a terrible time in Israel. Life ceased in the villages. I'll go back to this time of England after the Romans leave. They would come in to a town, or they would come to a farm, these bandits, and just kill everybody and take their stuff. That's what life was like. Well, that's what it had been like in Israel. The Israelites had been, and she says that the life in the villages ceased. It ended in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. Now, it sounds at first, and I read people, and kind of Mary thought so, like she's saying, look at me, I came and that's when things got better. But look how she describes herself, a mother in Israel. I don't think any of the other judges who were men would have talked like that, okay? She is different. She's a woman and she's different. But she says that for 20 years, they had really lived in desperate times. And then she says, I came, and she knows she's a judge. She knows she's chosen by God until I came, a mother in Israel. And then she says, when they chose new gods, the war came to their gates.
The Israelites?
Israelites,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Israelites
Turned away from God
when
again,
they
yeah.
turned away from God, when they began worshiping these Canaanite gods,
Okay.
they get punished. War comes to their gate. They bring it on themselves. That's what she's singing about. She's given some history. She says, all of you here understand, we brought this on ourselves, worshiping these Canaanite gods. She says, not a shield or a spear was found among 40,000 in Israel. Now, there are a lot more than 40,000, but this is lyrical. This is for a song. But she's saying they don't even have weapons to fight a war, not good weapons. Well, just later on in Judges, this same book, most of you have heard of Gideon. At that time, the Philistines were oppressing them, and the Philistines didn't allow the Israelites to have blacksmiths. If you had a plow that was broken, you have to go to a Philistine blacksmith and pay to have it fixed, because they don't want the Israelites banging plowshares into swords. Okay, so what they're remembering here is they have been living, sneaking around through the back roads, and they don't, they haven't been making weapons.
They're not prepared for a war.
So they have gotten to the point, they're not prepared for a war anymore. And that reinforces the fact that this is God's victory, not theirs. Logically, they could not have waged war. Yes.
Right, I want to ask you just a general question. So the Canaanites were allies to Israel.
Yes.
And they were living among the Israelites,
Yes.
and the Israelites accepted them.
Yes.
So, they're not, my brain goes to when the tribes split and the other tribe went to Assyria, and then the Assyrians, and then now the Israelites said, "Who you? You're not a real Israelite." So, but whatever. Okay. So then this guy he splits off from the Israelis and Canaanites,
Right.
and goes set up his tent on his own. and then he sides with Jabin,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
The bad guy, the one that's been oppressing them for all
But not
these
his
years.
wife.
Not his wife, well, apparently not his wife. Was she a Canaanite too?
We don't really know,
Okay.
it's likely,
Okay, all right.
but people think because her name is JL, that that's a Hebrew name, because you know, I don't think so.
But you did say that the Canaanites and the Israelis intermarried.
Yeah.
Mary said that, but it's
Okay.
not, it does happen. So through the, I'm sorry, let me let you finish your question.
You're wrong.
Let me let you finish your question.
No, so then, you know, that's the only thing, if she an Israelite or Canaanite, you would think maybe if she really intermarried, then that's what she would do. Let me stick this, tent thing through this guy's head. I don't care what my husband says, you know,
Yes.
whatever. So that's just the point, how, for whatever reason, unlike how they behaved before with their purity and their, you know, grandiosity about being pure blood, all of a sudden this is happening, but it's happening, whatever. I'm just, I remember, I'm
Is
the
Mario's
agitator.
mic on? Can you guys hear Mario?
Yeah.
Anyone? Is your mic on?
Yeah, Terry
my
says
mic's
yes.
on.
Terry says
All
yes.
right, so I'll diverge for a moment. When you deal with the Jews, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Through lots of history, there have been tribes, literal tribes, made up of both Jews and Arabs. Okay, and yes, they do wind up intermarrying. All of their rules are sort of flexible. They're very pragmatic people. But what you're bringing up, the points you're bringing up, are really good. And as it happens, it's gonna tie into something I'm gonna tell you in a few minutes.
Verse 10. You who ride white donkeys, who sit on saddled blankets, and you who travel the roads, ponder the voices of the singers at the watering places. There they shall recount the righteous acts of the Lord, the righteous deeds of his villagers in Israel. Then the people of the Lord went down to the gates. Awake, awake, O Deborah, awake, awake, sing a song. Arise, O Barak, and take hold of your captives, O son of Abaddon.
So, yeah, and again, remember, this is a song. This is a celebration for everybody over this incredible victory, totally, almost unbelievable victory. And what she's saying is, this song that we're making about our great victory is going to be sung for a long time. You folks are going to go to the watering holes because the shepherds congregated. They all came to watering holes, and you're going to get together and you're going to sing this song, right? This is going to be remembered for generations, and you're going to get there and meet up with other ones, and you're going to sing this song. So this is a song about the song itself. This is pretty common. I told you there are times, lots of times, where kings would pay. In medieval times, they called them a bard. These guys who made songs, and they would pay somebody to make a song about their glorious victory. She's making one, her and Barak are making one, and she's telling all the people, you guys, we're going to be singing song about this victory for a long time. And when you get together at the watering holes, you're going to remember today. That's the point.
This next section, she's going to go through the different tribes of who showed up and who didn't show up. Then the survivors came down to the nobles. The people of the Lord came down to me against the mighty. Some came from Ephraim with their roots in Amalek. Benjamin came with his people after you. The commanders came down from Achar, the bearers of the marshal's staff with Zebulun. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah, and Issachar was with Barak, rushing into the valley at his heels. In the class of Reuben, there was a great indecision. Why did they sit among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling of the flocks? In the clans of Reuben, there was great indecision. Do you want me to stop here?
Yeah, if you won't mind. So when this started, you remember they talk about Barak going and gathering warriors from two of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Ephraim.
And no, not Ephraim, and I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
Forest, where that is.
go ahead.
But you, all of a sudden, she's talking about these other tribes and how Benjamin came and helped. But among the tribe of Reuben, there was great indecision. Now, why is she talking about them when it sounded earlier like it was only the two tribes that were fighting this battle? And this is where I hope you appreciate, it's not a history class, but a lot of things make better sense. When the Israelites were across the Jordan, remember they stayed in the wilderness for a long time, and then they come up and they're about to go take possession of the promised land, right?
Right.
And they're going to have to fight. They know they're going to have to fight for it. Two of the tribes, Reuben and Gad, liked it on the other side of the Jordan. They weren't supposed to stay there. The promised land was on the west side of the Jordan, but they said, hey, we kind of like it here. And they go to Moses and say, would it be a problem if we just stayed on this side? This is a good place for cattle. We have a lot of cattle. And Moses said, what do you think? You're going to let your brothers go in and fight while you stay over here and raise cattle? No. And they said, well, you know, but, and he said, I'll tell you what, if you agree that you will come in and help your brothers, the other tribes, conquer the land, then I'll allow you to come back and live on this side in Moab. And it's actually Reuben and Gad and half of Manasseh. So the point here is that these tribes were supposed to help each other. They were supposed to help conquer this land. And the two and a half tribes, they go, okay, we promise. We will ride into to the promised land with you. We will fight and help our brothers conquer. And then, if it's okay, we're coming back here. And Moses said, fine, if you do what you say, it's okay. They weren't supposed to stay in Moab. And what winds up happening to those tribes is they just sort of fade away. We don't hear much, they just sort of disappear. But at this time, they were supposed to be helping the other tribes. And so Deborah's going to kind of point fingers at them. You guys didn't show up. Yes, the battle belongs to the two tribes that are named,
which is Zebulun and Naphtali.
Zebulun and Naphtali. The battle belongs to them because this is the land they've inherited. This is their section of the promised land. But the other ones are supposed to come help them conquer, and they don't. And Deborah rats them out. This is in the song. You know, in the tribe of Reuben, there was great indecision. Like, should I go? Should I not go? Those guys have 900 iron chariots. I think I'm going to stay over here and raise some cattle. And she's calling them out for that in this song.
Gilead remained beyond the Jordan. Dan, why did you linger by the ships? Asher stayed at the coast and remained in his harbors. Zebulun was a people who risked their lives. Naphtali too, on the heights of the battlefield. Kings came and fought. Then the kings of Canaan fought at Tamash by the waters of Megiddo, but they took no plunder of silver.
And I hate to pick this thing apart but there's a lot crammed into this one stanza of the song. But she names some of the other tribes. She does say that Zebulun was the people who risked their lives. So she's naming the ones who kind of ducked out of the battle. And then she mentions Zebulun fought. And so you see the purpose in this. This is a recount of the great battle. And she's acknowledging the people who fought, but she's also calling out the ones who didn't show up to help their brothers. But then notice she says, kings came and fought. She's talking about the Canaanite kings, right? So it wasn't just Jabin's army. There are other Canaanite kingdoms in this area, and they came and joined. This is a much bigger battle than we kind of understood out of the last chapter in Judges. So the kings came, then the kings of Canaan fought at Tanakh by the waters of Megiddo. And here I'm going to digress for a minute. Megiddo, and we were there when we lived in Israel, but Megiddo is this strategically important place. And you all have heard the term Armageddon, right?
Mhm.
Armageddon is really Har Megiddo. Har means the hills. Megiddo is this place. And that's what the word means. But people say strategically, if Syria was going to come in and try and take over Israel today, they would ride down around the Galilee and right across the plains of Megiddo. This is historic stuff going on. And so it says they came and they fought by the waters of Megiddo, but they took no plunder of silver. Normally, you win a battle, you get to take all of the other people's stuff. Any money they have, all their weapons, clothing is really, really good clothing is expensive. So you get the plunder. And what Deborah is saying, what they're saying in this song is, these kings of Canaan came to fight us, but they bit off more than they could chew, and they didn't go home with any plunder because we beat them. You hear how this song is somebody celebrating a victory. And it's kind of like, yeah, you guys came, you picked the wrong side, you fought against us, and you went home empty-handed.
Isn't Megiddo, it's not really mountains, it's like hills. But doesn't it look over like the whole valley?
Yes.
Well, the hills do. Megiddo is it's out in a plain.
Okay.
Megiddo is out in the flat. Now they're over the years, they've built up a hill there,
Right.
but it's in the middle of the plain. So it's a good lookout spot. But you look up into the hills over towards the Galilee. And like I said, it's strategically, it's a
But
really good
Megiddo
place.
is a plain.
Megiddo itself is a plain.
And what you said that these two tribes, Reuben and Gad and half of Manasseh, they stayed on the west side of the Jordan, or came back to the west side of the Jordan. And you mentioned Moab.
Yes.
Was that the city, the town, or whatever, or the
Moab
region?
is all the above. It's a region, but there was a city at one
And
time.
present day is what? Syria,
Jordan.
Jordan? Okay.
And why is that important? The Israelites were told not to intermarry with Moabites. I mean, that's specifically said because they worship these foreign gods. They were told not to. And these tribes said, we kind of like it here, and I think it's more than just the cattle. I think maybe they like the more loose nature of their religion, and it cost them. They literally just sort of disappear as tribes over time. They blend in with the Moabites.
What is the relation time frame from this to when the split of the two, the northern and southern kingdoms occurred?
I can't remember. It's a few hundred years.
Because it just sounds like they're getting diluted. big
Yes.
time.
They are. Yeah, and they get in trouble for that.
Verse 20, from the heavens the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river of Kishon swept them away, the ancient river, the river of Kishon.
So let's
March on,
Oh,
O my soul, in strength.
March on. So if you're reading along, verses, what is that,
20 and 21. Uh-huh.
Look at the first one. From the heavens, the stars fought. You know, the stars were not fighting each other. You understand, this again is poetry. It's a song. She's saying that God, the angels,
Yahweh was on their side.
Yahweh was on their side. From the heavens, the stars fought. From their courses, they fought against Sisera. It's not the stars themselves, but they're acknowledging that this battle was won not at a human level. There's nothing wrong. I mean, that is very, very accurate. We got to be big boys and girls and understand this is a song.
Then the hoofs of the horses thundered, the road galloping, the mad galloping of his stallions. Curse Morose, says the angel of the Lord, bitterly curse her inhabitants, for they did not come to help the Lord against the mighty.
Now, that Meroz is just a town, a city. But you notice she's saying, curse these people of Meroz, they didn't come to help us. What you're seeing here is that this battle was more than just the 10,000 soldiers of Israel versus the 900 iron chariots. There are other people who should have joined in the battle and didn't. And for Meroz is nearby. Those people she's really irritated at. They should have come to help. And she says, the angel says, curse them. You know, you get what's going on. I wouldn't try and
Are those people Israelites?
it's a good question. It's sort of a mix.
Okay.
Most blessed among women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a magnificent bowl, she brought him curds. She reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera and crushed his skull. She shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he collapsed, he fell. There he lay still. At her feet he collapsed, he fell. Where he collapsed, there he fell dead.
Once again, put yourself in this place. You're the victors in this big battle. Look at what Deborah is doing. She's making sure to memorialize Jael for her part in this. She's remembering the little people who fought. And then she says, most blessed among women is Jael, who drove a tent peg to the guy's head, right? It seems odd to us. Well, I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But what's the big thing to remember here is this is a song of victory, and she doesn't forget the people who played a part. This song, she says, is going to be sung at the watering holes for generations. She didn't actually say it, but that's what that means, for generations. And she memorializes Jael for her part in it.
Sisera's mother looked through the window. She peered through the lattice and lamented, why is this chariot so long in coming? What has delayed the clatter of his chariots? Her wisest ladies answer, indeed, she keeps telling herself, are they finding and dividing the spoil? A girl or two for each warrior, a plunder of dyed garments for Sisera, the spoil of embroidered garments for the neck of the looter? Okay. So may all your enemies perish, O Lord, but may those who love you shine with the sun at its brightest. And the land had rest for 40 years.
So this sounds like a terrible thing. Listen to what she's saying, that back in what Hagoyim, back in Sisera's hometown, the women are mourning. Sisera's mother is sitting at home. Remember, she's singing this, or they're singing this to the people of Israel. And they're talking about this general's mother is sitting at home worried. Where's my son? Why haven't she knows he went to battle. Why haven't I heard anything from him? It's been a long time. She checks her sundial and she knows it's been too long. And she says, surely he's out there dividing up the plunder.
Which means he won. Surely he won.
Surely he won. And the reason he's late coming home is because they have so much loot that it's taken them extra time to gather it all up, right? And so they're actually singing about the distress of the women, the mothers who are now bereft of their children. And this sounds like such a harsh thing to us. In the Middle Ages, they did the same thing. People who win wars do this sort of thing. So I'm going to read you something else. I'm going to digress just a little bit because it's a kind of a good thing to remember. And I have my sheet. Oh, here it is. This is from the book of Jeremiah, right? This is Jeremiah 31. This is what the Lord says. A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping. Rachel weeping for her children. and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. That was about an Israelite loss, and the men got hauled off in captivity, right? There is the same thing going on. When you lose a war, there are consequences, and the women stay home and mourn. Now, if that sounds familiar, we studied Matthew here just, some weeks ago. I'm going to read you from Matthew 2:16. This is when Herod sent out the order that all the babies under the age of 2 be killed, right? And he says, when Herod saw that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he filled with rage, sending orders to put to death all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under. And it says, thus was the prophecy spoken through Jeremiah fulfilled. And in Matthew, it repeats, a voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. See, for the death of all these children, the mothers weep and mourn. So what's going on here with Deborah in this song? It seems kind of harsh, but that's what happens in wars, right? The women stay home and mourn for the fallen. We've seen this, we've heard it, and if you look at some of the medieval, things after a battle, that happens. A lot of the time they haul off the women to become war brides. But what she's doing, the story she's telling here, is supposed to sort of, I guess, cheer up the winners, the Israelite winners of this. It's like we won, you lose, and back home, Sisera, you remember they've been oppressing Israel for 20 years. Well, now it's our turn. Now we're going to remember they fought against us, and God delivered them into our hands, and now it's their time to mourn. Now it's their turn to go through the hard times. Does it sound harsh? Yeah. Is it uncommon though? Is it really that weird? It's really not.
And this is the end of the story of Deborah, but I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. The Israelites didn't learn their lesson again, because I'm just going to read the first 2 verses of chapter 6. Again, the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord. So he delivered them into the hands of Medina for 7 years. And the hands of Medina prevailed against Israel. So once again, we talked about Judges is this process of repenting and then going away again and coming back away.
When things get easy, we don't need God anymore, right? Thanks for the victory. We got it from here. And they do it over and over. And the whole book of Judges is about exactly that. In Matthew, well, in fact, let's go back just real quick because we got a little bit of time. Back in Jeremiah, if I've got the sheet here, but basically what they're told is stop your mourning. You'll be rewarded. Okay. Right now, I should find that the actual verses on that that I've got printed. Here we go. Remember when I read that about there's a voice crying in Ramah, the Rachel weeping for her children. But Jeremiah goes on and says, this is what the Lord says. And this is in Jeremiah 33, if you ever want to look it up. But this is what the Lord says. Keep your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears. For the reward for your work will come, declares the Lord. Then your children will return from the land of the enemy. So there is hope in your future, declares the Lord, and your children will return to their land. Now, you see how this ties together though, but this is Jeremiah speaking, thus saith the Lord. But he says, look, I know you're weeping now, but God says, dry it up. There's going to come a time when your children will return home from captivity. Your tears will be dried. God, what they're saying is, God has not forgotten you. I know you feel bad now, just like Sisera's mother back home. I know you feel bad now, but they have this promise, this assurance that God has not abandoned them. That's the second half of that story, you know, about the weeping, about the voice heard in Ramah. Yeah, but you're still God's children. And the Jews take a sort of a long view of history, unlike us. You know, they get hauled away into captivity, but they keep the faith. You know, at least a lot of them do. And they sing and talk about a time when they get to return to Israel. They have this promise, and they're told to have the assurance that God doesn't abandon us. And this is where, and is Kelly's not still on? I wanted to, I'm sorry, sometimes it's bad to call people out by name,
Yeah,
but
I know it's fine.
when you're in a lot of pain, I was in all that pain, but we have this assurance, and we see that throughout this entire Bible. We see that sometimes the problems that we make for ourselves, but sometimes it's not. But what we're told is God doesn't abandon us. One other point I want to make about this thing on Deborah, and it's going to come up next week too. God uses ordinary people. Deborah, Jean mentioned this morning, Deborah seems like she's just dropped out of a helicopter, you know, she's just suddenly there. Well, she was just a person. And then she's called by God for something really special. God calls flawed people, he calls ordinary people, and the ones who respond, that actually listen to the call and do it, you see, they aren't necessarily any different than you. They aren't any different than me. And he calls this woman, which we think, you know, that never happened, but he does. And she says she's a mother in Israel, and he calls her out to be this leader. There was, I guess we ought to call it quits. It's 9:57. God calls ordinary people. Jean said something this morning about the apostles. Jesus calls them and says, follow me. And they just drop what they're doing and go follow. And what I told him was, I think about that and I wonder, would I have done that? Would I have just dropped what I was doing and followed him? And I think, well, maybe that's not why I'm called to do big things, because maybe I wouldn't have. He calls ordinary people, they're fishermen, they're tax collectors, they're us. And he sets us aside for something. We all have that. We get called for a purpose. Maria and I have talked a little bit about sanctification, and it's a complicated word, but there's an essence in there of being set apart for a purpose. That's who Deborah is. Deborah's a mother in Israel until God calls her and says, hey, you've got a place in this. It does say that she followed Barak in the battle. It says that in this song. She wasn't leading it, but her presence there, without her, Barak says, there's no way I'm taking my soldiers to fight 900 iron chariots. Without Deborah, without her saying, this is what God says, this victory doesn't happen. She's not the warlord. She's not the general. She's riding behind Barak, but her presence there and her agreement to be present is what allowed this victory to happen.
You know, when I read the last two paragraphs of the song, it sort of foretold we are one people. The mother of Sisera, our enemy, and she's hurting just like we're hurting. And to me, that indicated that it might be the message from Deborah, from God. Hang loose here, buddy. I know some guys are bad and some guys are good, but we're brothers before the Almighty. And we still haven't learned that lesson.
You know, Gene, I'm kind of glad you said it. It's a good point. It's a thing that we should keep in mind. The same thing that happened to them is now happening in the other country, and remembering that, you know, it has, and you know, part of that is it's a good point. They were told, part of the law says that they are supposed to be kind to sojourners, to people who are immigrants, because they're told, remember, we were sojourners in Egypt, okay? Remember, we were in their shoes not that long ago. And that is a message that runs throughout these scriptures. And you're right, we can see that lesson. You know, that Sisera's mother, instead of crowing about it, to remember she's a human being too. Yeah, it's a good point.
Hey, Scott, but unfortunately, God wasn't their God.
Oh,
Sisera's mother didn't believe in the same God. Neither did Sisera. And so I understand Gene's point of view, but unfortunately, they didn't believe in the same God.
no, they did not.
And they did make war against Israel.
If you guys, the mic is on, if you hear what he's saying, their God, they didn't have the insurance. Next week, we're going to study
Rahab, and we're going to go back. So Rahab is in Joshua 2, and Rahab was a prostitute. So,
and we talked about what Mario just said last night. So it's going to come up, what you just said is going to come up next week. Their God was not Yahweh. The last point that you might take from this is that we are supposed to have an assurance that maybe other people don't have. Maybe it cushions the blow a little bit. We're going to talk about that next week, Mario, when we
Okay.
talk about Rahab.
Thanks.
okay.
God, we look at these stories and they seem alien to us sometimes unless we remember that we're not really that different. We all have the same shortcomings. And we're thankful that you give us these reminders of who we are and the fact that we are called to a purpose. We're thankful for the reminders that you do things in your time. And when it's your time, nothing holds it back. I look at this world, I look at the news, Lord, and sometimes it almost feels hopeless. And this serves as such a reminder that it's not hopeless. You do things in your time, and there's no stopping it when it is your time. Help us to remember that this week. As we go out to look around at things, to remember that you're still in control. And I personally want to ask for that reminder that people around us are your children too. That they go through the same things in these times of turmoil and these times of illness. To remind us, to remind me that I sat in that same chair not that long ago. Help us to see how we can be your hands, your eyes, that instead of just looking at their distress, we have the ability to reach out and share your grace and share your love. Be with us, be with those that we continue to lift up in prayer to you. Be with Kelly. Help her doctors find an answer to what she's going through. Guide their hands. Amen.
Yeah.
We have to sing happy birthday to Mary.
Happy birthday
Birthday
to you.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday, dear Mary. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Yay!
Thank you.
Thanks, 'cause I can't do that.
There you go. Thank
We
you,
love you,
guys.
Mary. We love you too, Scott.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day and a good day.
Have a great
Bye.
birthday. Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.